Hi everyone. This video is a very special video. It is my 4th annual 9/11 Memorial Book Review. Every year I do a 9/11 Memorial Book Review. I started in 2021 and it wasn't just for 9/11, it was actually part of an experiment that I was doing. I wanted to review books from events that happened during my childhood, historical events, or events that I learned about in my childhood that had a major impact on me. So some of the annual book reviews that I do are on Columbine, Ida B. Wells Barnett, Emmett Till's birthday, 9/11, and Christmas/Kwanzaa. Now, when 9/11 occurred, I was 12 years old, so I have a lot of memories from that time, some of them clouded by fear, some of them just snippets. I remember snippets of the day that 9/11 occurred. So whenever I read any type of book about 9/11, sometimes I'll have a flashback of that day, or I have a better understanding of how to cope emotionally with this historical event. The more that I read, the more that I learn, and the more stories that I hear, it really shows me how very layered 9/11 was and is still layered until this day. If you want to see my other book reviews on 9/11, I have them on my channel. When I first started, I would do a 3 to 4 day series of books, but now that I don't have that much time, as the past few years, I've just narrowed it down to one book. So if you want to look at those other ones, you can, and if you want to add them to your collection, you can. I found this book at my local bookstore, at my magical bookstore that I call it, because every time I go to this bookstore and I have a topic that I'm trying to find out more about, or I need to find a book on a specific subject, a very powerful book, I will always find it at this used bookstore. What is ironic with all of the 9/11 books, or almost all of them that I have in my collection, most of them were either published in 2001 or they were published in 2002. Some of them are out of print. So I'm trying to collect as many as possible so that I can show you, and if you happen to find it, it'll be a special book to add to your collection. So before I get into this book review, there are two people I want to tell you about. The first one is Max Frankel, who was the former editor of the New York Times for this book, September 11th, a collection of newspaper front pages selected by the Poynter Institute. And the next one I will tell you about is the Poynter Institute. So let us discuss Max Frankel. I found his bio on Wikipedia, so I guess you could take it with a grain of salt, or if you wanted to review more about him, you can look online. So apparently Max Frankel is 94 years old. He is still among the land of the living. He was born April 3rd, 1930, and is an American journalist. He was executive director of the New York Times from 1986 to 1994. He has a bachelor's and a master's from Columbia College, and this man has a very extensive career. So he was born in Germany, and his family belonged to the Jewish minority in the area. They ended up escaping, I guess, from the Holocaust. They came to the United States in 1940. He went to a high school of music and art in Manhattan, class of 1948. He also was in the Army from 1953 to 1955. He joined the Times as a full reporter in 1952. Then he went overseas in 1956 to cover stories arising from the Hungarian Revolution. So this man is very well traveled. He's just seen a lot of historical events in his lifetime. He was the chief Washington correspondent and head of the Washington Bureau from 1968 to 1972, then Sunday editor of the Times until 1976, editor of the editorial page from 77 to 86, and executive director from 86 to 94. Then he wrote a Times Magazine column on the media from 95 until 2000. He was interviewed in 1985 for a documentary called We Were So Beloved. He is the author of High Noon in the Cold War and The Times of My Life and My Life with the Times. That's a nice play on words. So yeah, that is Max Frankel. He sounds like a very interesting man. I think I'd like to read his book just to see what his perspective on things were, like how journalism was during his time. Because I know it's still the same, but it's also changed. Next, we are going to find out about the Poynter Institute. And it says on poynter.org, the Poynter Institute is a global nonprofit that strengthens democracy by improving the relevance, ethical practice, and value of journalism through teaching, publishing, convening, fact-checking, and media literacy. Poynter creates a crossroads where communities come together to use journalism to confront society's complex problems. When you open the book, at the front is a dedication, and it is dedicated to the victims of the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001. In the contents, there are a list of newspapers by state. This book features headlines, front pages of articles about September 11th, either the day of or the day after, and it is from every single state in the United States and also countries outside of the United States. So some of the articles in here are in a different language. So let us read or briefly go over the preface. Moments frozen in time. For each of us, there are occasions, a wedding, a child's birth, a family tragedy, so compelling that details are forever etched in memory. Few events define us all. September 11th, 2001 did. We all gaped, horrified as the second passenger plane collided with the second tower. We all watched the wedge of destruction carved into the Pentagon. We all peered into the desolate crater on a field in Pennsylvania. We all looked eagerly for more ghostly survivors to trudge, holding one another out of the concrete soot that clouded the remains of collapsed towers. Not since the unaliving of John F. Kennedy has one event so transfixed a nation, a world. The Poynter Institute, a school that teaches skills and ethics to professional journalists in St. Petersburg, Florida, had no plan to memorialize these frozen moments in time. The school merely posted a notice on its website inviting news editors who designed front pages to send us an electronic copy of how they told this urgent story. Within a day, hundreds of front pages were recorded on our website, and all over the world, people were turning to the school as another place to connect themselves to the record of these terrible events, and thus to one another. Our computers nearly sank beneath the weight of witnesses to these pages. I think that's really interesting because this is not the first time I've read about this happening. It was either people collecting photographs, like people bringing photographs that they took themselves, complete strangers, people bringing artwork that they created for it, people bringing poetry. I just think it's really cool how no matter what talent anybody had, whether it was art, whether it was music or poetry or something, everybody brought their own piece of creativity. Everybody brought their own essence to make a beautiful fabric of hope and peace for all mankind. So I feel like that's what this book has done. Even though it's a terrible tragedy, even though it's hard to process, somehow, unintentionally, they had this entire collection to try to make sense of what happened. It was then that the school decided to publish representative front pages. We have three purposes: to provide a more permanent record as a memorial to the dead, the bereaved, and the heroic; to take the occasion, as Max Frankel, the retired executive editor of the New York Times, does with unflinching insight; to remind Americans, especially media corporations, of the purpose of a free press; and to help provide funds to the victims. The Poynter Institute, the newspapers who have allowed their pages to be republished, and the Andrews McMeel Publishing will receive no profits from this book. They will go instead to the September 11th Fund, administered by United Way. And this was by Andrew E. Barnes, who, I don't know if he still is, but he was the chairman of the Poynter Institute. Now, the introduction is by Max Frankel, and it is The Oxygen of Our Liberty. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, I'm just going to skip through. Here lies a souvenir of horror, a blazing obituary of American innocence. But you are also holding a testament to news, tangible evidence that urgent and reliable news is no more obsolete than hate and heroism, fear and favor. Here atop the rubble lies a reminder that news remains the oxygen of our liberty. Can you imagine September 11, 2001 without the off-scorn media? Some might argue that the world's greatest communications network served to invite this nightmare, that the terrorists were not only looking to unalive random thousands, but also to produce a spectacle whose imagery would instantly humble the strong and empower the weak. I still think media is the same, but it is completely different at the same time. Whereas in the past, it used to be designated people who were the media, and it was glossed over, or it was polished before it was presented. People went to school for presentation and different things. Now it is everybody is the media. I am the media. You are the media. You are the media. Some of us are really good at it. Some of us are not that, whatever we are. But it's still the media. We have social media, we have our phones, we have cameras in our hand, we go on lives and stuff. We've created our own media. We start trends with our opinions. But back in 2001, which, I mean, this is under 30 years, but I remember, I feel like news back then was slower. Just like how you have celebrities getting just big over Instagram and Twitter or X, and going live, going on Twitch. Back then, you might have okay, their music video is being presented on this particular channel or this particular magazine. It took longer, I feel, to get information. It wasn't instantaneous. We are now instantaneous. And also, you bring in the AI factor. I'm sure AI was back then. We just didn't, recognize it. But now that's become a component of the media. So media is different, but it is the same at the same time. Every page of this book proves that news is no mere rendering of lifeless facts. News is the portrayal and ordering of information in vivid image and narrative. News is the transformation of facts into stories so they can be understood and remembered in ways that inform and instruct. even as they delight or dismay. News is not neutral. Like literature, the most important news dwells on stories of conflict, on the rivalries and casualties of life. When in the 90s Americans found themselves liberated from hot and cold wars, they rapidly shifted attention from sober news to facile entertainments, and our great media companies indulged them without shame. And I think that was an interesting point, because sometimes when I'm mentally preparing for my September 11th book review, which I do every year, I start preparing mentally around June or July, and I will start looking up YouTube videos. I'll start reading articles and different things. And one of the videos I watch the most are the media the day that it happened. What was in the news the day that it happened? I feel after 9/11, everything changed unspokenly. I don't know if unspokenly is an actual term, but that's the only term I can think of right now. It felt like we went from one world to another. I think it was too much in one day. And I say this every year in my annual book review, but I can't say it any other way. It was just too much going on in one day. America just couldn't mentally handle it, because it was like everybody's worst fears coming true in one day across America. You got people scared of planes. Now the plane crashed into a building, or so they say, depending on who you ask. Then you're trapped at the top of a burning building. Then you're jumping. You're watching people unalive themselves just trying to get out of the heat. Then you have this going over there. You have this going over there. Everybody's screaming. It's just terror all over. And then after that, the anthrax attacks, or so they say. It was just too much for the average American to handle, I feel, at the time. Even when you look at the videos, it just still looked like, oh, you kind of dressed like the 90s. Like, the 90s weren't over. We were still in the 90s. We're just like, la, 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 la. Life is good. Just collectively complacent. And then, boom. So, some of the clips from that day is like, oh, this commercial, oh, we're interviewing this person, oh, this is going on, the basketball game, ha 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 ha, not even knowing what's about to happen. Many newspapers followed the television trail towards the trivial, unable to command the attention of young readers. The papers blamed young people's loss of interest in public affairs instead of their own failure to make the important interesting. I don't think it was just that. I really feel people's attention span got less and less and less and less. Yeah. And this is just from me tutoring children for 10 years. It was like every year their attention span went down, or every year they could read less than they did the year before. They knew one less subject than the year before. So I don't specifically blame the newspapers on that. I just think it was just a educational problem, a many-layered problem. Many papers that were gobbled up by the large media corporations were too often forced to reduce their staffs and ambitions to enhance the income of distant masters. Editors trained to be teachers were hounded into becoming marketers. Technology accelerated these trends. Cable, satellite, and internet transmissions carved audiences into niche markets that undermined all sense of community. Impatience with public service drove political news almost off the tube. Documentaries about great national issues totally disappeared. Journalists were quick to return to their roots and assert their claims. The terror attack helped all of us regain our focus. Fear is the great engine of news. It focuses minds. It demands a ranking of dangers. It searches near and far for paths to safety. That is why terror news of terror trumps the fear of growing fat or losing the pennant, and why, as fear recedes, so will the thirst for relevant news. Still, an informed intelligence should also want to discern the risks and benefits that lie beyond the horizon. After we have sung the hymns to the heroes who dig in the rubble and wage war, where will we find the media heroes who will sacrifice some profit to nourish us with news? So that part actually stood out to me again, because I remember when it happened how very patriotic people became. I had never seen so many American flags in my life. And as a child, I wasn't patriotic at all. I mean, I went to a religious school, so they tried to make me patriotic. Like, I had to say the pledge to the Christian flag, the American flag, and the Bible. But I really wasn't feeling any of it. I really wasn't feeling any of it. And I'm still not very patriotic or anything like that. But I do remember you had to watch your words. You couldn't just say anything. You saw what happened to the Dixie Chicks. They said, "We're ashamed George Bush is from Texas." And people dragged them. I actually think that ended their career, honestly. Or at least it took a hit that started the ending of their career. Because you couldn't question anything. You couldn't state any opinion. People were just gung-ho. And the quickest way to get somebody, a group of diverse people to join together, is to make one common enemy. So I also remember the attacks on Muslims, and at that time I actually didn't know about Islam. I didn't, because my whole schooling was just like fundamentalist Christian, so they didn't teach me about Islam. They didn't really teach me about other religions. They just say, stay away from that religion, stay away from that religion. So I never learned about it. But I do remember seeing videos of Muslims being like, this is not Islam, we are of peace. And I'm like, well, why are they attacking them if they're of peace? Like, they said it wasn't them. It was just very, very tense. Like, it was very scary. I don't know what was more scarier. Thinking there's going to be another event, the anthrax that they say happened, or people just being on the edge and not knowing what to think. People getting angry, and still angry to this day. That's why when I do my September 11th, I try to be as neutral as possible, unless it's something that I felt personally at the time. Because even though I think I may know, I really don't know. Because the more I read, the more layered it becomes, the more I'm like, I literally don't know. The only thing that I personally know that I feel is, it's not what's being presented. It's not as simple as I was taught, or as simple as people have been taught. I feel it was a global plan of people that we could see and people that we could not see, for an end that we think we may know, but we really don't know all of the components of it for real. It's multiple things that they wanted. Whoever and whatever they are. So I went through this entire book because there are so many pictures, and I wrote down the page numbers of the articles that stood out to me. And I'm going to tell you why it stood out to me. So the first one is from the Huntsville Times. It's Attack on America, Tuesday, September 11, 2001. It says, coordinated airplane strikes or airplane attacks strike the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Huntsvillians are in limbo as FAA shuts down all airports across the country. Arafat is horrified, but Palestinian crowds chant God is great and pass out candy. Pain of Oklahoma comes crashing back. A nightmarish scene at Ground Zero. So this one stood out to me because there are so many. It's not even this, it's just this. These little bullet points. It's just giving a synopsis, but all of the synopsises are just extreme. Like you have the pain of Oklahoma comes crashing back. That's the Oklahoma City bombing. Nightmarish scene. Talking about the FAA and then talking about other countries and stuff like that. And then down below, it'd be like, sunny, dry after a clear night. I'm like, what? Did today's horror touch you? Tell us. 536-9999. So they want people to call in and talk about it. Next page. Extra. The Arizona Republic in Phoenix, Arizona. U.S. attacked. And it says, jets crash in a trade center, Pentagon. Bush rushed to military base. Planes grounded nationwide. Sky Harbor, state dams, buildings closed. Bin Laden suspected in attack. So this was published the same day. So now they have Bin Laden's name in there. Okay. But what stood out to me was it's like a slideshow. It's like boom, boom, boom. Just the layout of this page. Boom, boom, boom. 1, 2, 3. This one, page 6, the Daily Titan, and this is from California State University in Fullerton, California. So even though the other pages had a picture of the buildings, this page in particular just had the students and their reactions. It says, Robin Hamey and Brittany LeHomedeau express emotion as they watch developments unfold on television sets in the Titan Student Union. And then it says kamikaze attack, so that it's almost like referencing Pearl Harbor. In this book, you'll find a lot of references to Pearl Harbor and also the Oklahoma City bombing. But I've marked this page because that's what people were doing. Like, I remember, I think I got out of school early that day. We went to this beauty salon because my mom sold hair products. So we would be going to every single beauty salon and barber college in St. Louis in like the 90s and 2000s. So we were, I believe, at some beauty salon and it was on the television. And that whole week was a blur. None of the shows I watched were on because I would watch Friends, I would watch The Simpsons. I knew they weren't going to be on, but I just didn't want to watch the TV. Because the more I glued myself to the TV, the more stressed I became, even though I was 12 years old. When I was 12, I would watch the news all of the time. I loved watching the news. I would watch it at night. I would watch it in the morning. I don't know why. I don't know why I watch the news. I would watch Matlock. I'd watch Jay Leno, Saturday Night Live, Boy Meets World, all those different things. But it was the first time that I just wanted everything to stop. I didn't want to see it because every time I'd see it, I couldn't look away. And even when I closed my eyes, I could just see it on the television. And I just got extremely depressed and extremely stressed. So when I see this picture, that's literally how I felt, like watching the TV. And I'm sure a lot of people that weren't there felt this way too, because it's like you can't do anything. You can't save them. You can only see it over and over and over and over. Page 9. This is from Sacramento, California, the Sacramento Bee. Now this picture is powerful. This is a powerful picture. It says Bush vows to punish evil acts of terror. And the description, amid the rubble of the collapsed 110-story towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, a man calls out, seeking anyone who might be in need of help. Look, this man is holding a fire extinguisher. Look at it again. like he can't do anything. It's over. Your fire extinguisher can't do anything because, according to one of my other books, there were fires burning underneath the rubble for maybe like 90 to 100 days. But at least he's trying. He's calling out to see if anybody can hear him. But I think this picture is powerful because that's basically what a lot of people felt like. Like they wanted to help, but they couldn't. Like, look at all of this that you have to clean up. Look at all of this that you have to piece through. Mentally, it's just like, I don't know where the first step is. I don't know where to go. Then this one, it says, rescuers hurry a man from one of the World Trade Center towers. An adjacent 47 building also collapsed several hours after the terrorist attack. I think this, I don't know if it's the same man, but I think this is the chaplain or the priest or the father. If this is the right one, don't quote me on that, but he was, I want to say, praying for people or giving last rites, and they pulled him out of the rubble. It's just terrible, just sad. Okay. Another one from San Francisco. It's from the San Francisco Chronicle, and it says nightmare. Now, some of these newspapers will just use one word, and I feel like every word that they used was very appropriate because, like, what else could you say? It was like a nightmare. You didn't know what was going on. Everybody was on edge. Everybody was angry. People all over the world were like, oh my gosh, like, they're like praying for America or sending or celebrating. Like, it was just too much. And I honestly didn't know what to believe because even at the time, I still kind of questioned the news, even though I watched it all the time. But nightmare. That is a nightmare. That's your worst nightmare. Who thinks they're going to go to work and be trapped in a building? Like, nobody goes to work and think they're going to have to jump to their death. But that's what happened. Nobody expected that. Me, that day, unlocked a new fear that I already had because I remember that year we had gone to Cleveland, Ohio, and I was on a plane, and I was scared of planes. It was August 2001, and I told this lady, I'm scared the plane will crash into a building. She's like, baby, planes don't crash into buildings. And I also had a fear of heights. I was afraid of very tall buildings. I didn't like going up high. I didn't like roller coasters. I still don't go on them. I didn't like going in elevators. I didn't like going in high buildings. So it was like a nightmare. It was like all of the fears you could possibly think of. If you're scared of elevators, now you're trapped in an elevator. If you're scared of tall buildings, now you're trapped in a freaking tall building. If you're afraid of planes, here's a plane crashing over here. If you're afraid of like chaos, boom. Nightmare. That's all they needed to say. Now, that's some good journalism for you. This one was the only newspaper headline that had a curse word. But you know what? It was appropriate. This one was from the Examiner in San Francisco, California, and it said, "Bastards!" Yeah. This is probably my favorite out of all of them, because you can't say that's not how you feel. A Changed America. The Examiner, special edition. Bastards! If you weren't scared, you were outraged. And if you didn't want to hide, if you wanted to hide, you either wanted to hide or you want to go whoever it was. If somebody said a purple elephant did it, I'm sure they would have gone after a purple elephant. All you needed to do was drop a name. All you needed to do was drop a place, and people would have been there. Because America, or at least the United States of America, that's just how this country was built. Like, we're talking about, I challenge you to a duel. Where is it? It's on site. That's how we are with a lot of stuff. So I think out of all of the articles, this was the most American. This was the most American article out of this whole book, for real. Like, this is the true America right here. Next, let's see. Page 19. This is a closer look at the picture I showed you earlier with the man with the fire extinguisher, but I think from a different angle. And it says act of war. And he's just like, okay, I'm going in. This picture actually reminds me of one of the books I reviewed, which was the We're Not Leaving, the first responders sharing their story. And it was terrible how they treated those first responders. Didn't give them any masks, any equipment that they needed, and they just ended up dying. Let's see. This one is one of the few articles that showed people running. Like, look at their face. It says Target America. And they're in their business suits, running for their lives. This picture right here, page, even though it's not in my list, if you get this book, you're going to see this picture over and over and over. It's in a lot of newspapers, but it's a very powerful picture because one person, this lady, she just can't handle it. She just can't look. And the other one is just like, I'm in pain and I can't look away. I can't look away. And they're both just hugging each other. They don't know what else to do. And it's mostly because of the people jumping from the buildings. I did look in here for to see if they had the front headline of The Falling Man, and I only found one. Just one. I can't remember whose it was. Let's see. 36. Day of Terror. This is the second Pearl Harbor. So many references to Pearl Harbor in this book. It almost made me want to go start reading books about Pearl Harbor, because I know about it. I know a little bit about it, but I feel like I could learn more. I just know, like, December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. This is what they said happened. This is the story. This is what's going on. But I feel I could learn more about Pearl Harbor and the Oklahoma City bombing too, because those are the two main events that are referenced in here. Let's see. 40. Just like the article that said bastards, this one is a one-worded article too. Evil. Evil. Yeah, it was evil. It was very, very evil. Very, very evil. As the years pass by, like how evil all of this was. I already knew it was evil, but just as I get older, how evil it was is really starting to sink in. The average person's mind does not go to this sophisticated level of evil. That's why I feel like it was this global operation. Like there were so many people involved in this tragedy. People we know of, people we don't know of from all parts of the world. I don't know who they are. I don't know what they are, but I do know that by their fruits, it is evil. And people are still suffering from what happened. It was like 23 years ago. Yeah, 23 years ago. People still suffering from 9/11, whether it's they lost their parent, their loved one, they got injured, they lost a leg or an arm, or their mind or their health. And it says below, it says, inside America's day of terror, World Trade Center, Pentagon targeted, Bin Laden emerges as top suspect. Stateless enemy confronts U.S. Lawrence prays for blast victims. Grief astonishment hit Lawrence. This is in Lawrence, Kansas. Public schools remain open. Games come to a standstill. Flights skid to a halt at KCI Airport. And investors remain upbeat. Okay, I think the only strange thing about this is investors remain upbeat. Who has time to think about stocks? Evil. In fact, why don't we put investor under evil? Because now all you think, like, what about the money? Who gives a care about the money? Like, stop. What is your money good for you? This one right here, page 42, was one of the first articles I've seen in here that just had the numbers, like the numerical. Instead of saying like terrorists, it just says 9/11/01. Yeah, there's no side thing. It's just, this is it. That's all they needed to say. They didn't need any words. They just needed this. Straight to the point. 48. American tragedy. And it's basically the people walking, the smoke, the darkness, the grayness. It doesn't show any like the others where it just shows the explosion. It's the aftermath. The silence. 48. 50. 58. What now? Actually, that was one of the things I was thinking after it happened. I'm like, what do we do now? Like, what's going to happen? And that's what they're thinking. How are we going to clean this up? How are we going to find the people? How are we going to war? Is there going to be another thing happening? What do we do next? Do we have to search for bodies? What now? You don't even know what to do first. You don't know what to do first. You don't know if you go to war. You don't know if you look for bodies. You don't know if you stand still. You just don't know. You don't know if you run. You don't know if there's going to be another thing. You just don't know. And that line was the perfect line for this article because it really gave feeling on what a lot of people felt that day. What now? I don't know. I don't know what to think. "66 survivors." This is one of the ones that was very hopeful, and it has this man being rescued by firefighters. God bless firefighters. I love them. A breath of life from the rubble. Bush today calls attacks war. Abandoned cars offer clues. Emergency workers pull out an injured colleague during the overnight search for survivors in the wreckage of the South Tower. "73. The longest day." I don't know if this is the same woman that was covered in dust, but it was the longest day. Let's look at that. They're just like, wow. I hope most of them are still alive and they didn't get sick from the dust. Because that dust was toxic. It has so many carcinogens in it and metals, and I really hope they didn't get sick. I hope they're still alive. Or if they aren't alive, that they lived a nice and healthy existence. People covered in soot and dust make their way through debris caused by the catastrophic attack on the World Trade Center. 74. A new day of infamy. Just like how Pearl Harbor and the Kennedy unaliving were talked about years and decades after, this is just one of those things. It's still being talked about decades after. I haven't found this YouTube channel. I can't remember what it's called, but they have a lot of talks about 9/11 investigations and different things. I have to put it in here if I can find it. 78. This one I chose because of the line, "Oh my God." Just the quote, because that's what a lot of people are saying. If you look at videos of people watching it happen, like that were in New York City or watching the TV or listening, this is one of the things they were saying. "Oh my God," like, "Oh my God, oh my God," like, "Oh my God," like they just couldn't believe it. Like they're either screaming, "Oh my God," like, "What? Wow," or they're screaming it in horror. But this is one of the more accurate phrases that I connect to that day. Because just going through the videos, YouTube, listening to like the written accounts and stuff, that's one sentence that I will always associate with that day. Very accurate. 85. Day of Terror. I chose this page because of this photo. The darkness kind of describes what I read in the book 9/11 or September 11th in oral history, and the accounts from the first responders, like the darkness after the smoke. Next, 89. Nothing will ever be the same. This is the one of the few where it was just one color. It's like abstract, but it's still very powerful. Red for the fire, red for the blood, red for the rage. Nothing will ever be the same. And you know what? It isn't. It wasn't. Nothing was the same after that. No. Something changed. I don't know exactly what changed, but a lot of things changed. I can't put my finger on it. I know the way we fly changed. I know probably foreign relations changed. Like, there's just too many changes to count on one finger. And even if it was a change we eventually did not want, at the time when it happened, well, I'm not saying we, like me and you, but I'm just collectively, most people were like, yes, I need you to listen to my phones. Yes, I need you to put these things in place. Like we were fighting for more security and more force and more things, because that's just how collectively mad everybody was, or collectively scared people were. So they were willing to say yes to things at that moment that maybe if something else happened, they wouldn't be okay with that. It just depends. Let's see. I think we saw this picture before, but it's a close-up. We rescued this guy. America in shock. I think this is a good picture because all of them look shocked. All of them have some type of emotion on their face. This man looks like he's either out of breath or crying. This man looks like just either angry or just panicked, and everybody looks out of breath. And it doesn't give a caption of what it is. I just know he's the... No. Okay. Hold on. I think this is father. The one that was giving the rights, and this may be his body, I think. I wonder if that's him. And if it's the person I think it is, then he knew a lot of the firefighters. Like, he was there for a lot of them. Nightmare, once again, and they're giving first aid to somebody on the ground. I'm calm. Calm down. So, this one is from Brazil. Rio de Janeiro. I'm sorry if I mispronounce it. I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't know if I pronounce it right. This is the only one that had the falling man. And I need to find a book on the falling man, because that was a very powerful picture. And a lot of people, it's hard to find pictures of the jumpers. It's hard to find videos of the jumpers. I found one video on YouTube of the jumpers, and I downloaded it so I could have a record, because people just like saying things didn't happen. So if I find footage of something that happened that I know is going to be erased, I just download it. But a lot of people were angry about the photos of the jumper. They're like, how dare you put the falling man on there, and da 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 da. And yeah, it was... If you try to look for videos online, like on YouTube in particular, it's going to be... It might be easier for you, but it was a challenge for me. It was a challenge. And I personally feel, for me, the jumpers were one of the worst parts for me in particular, because it's just like, you want to help them, but you just can't help them. You want to help them, but you can't float up and save them. You can't break their fall. You can't grow wings and save them. You just can't do anything. All you can do is watch them jump. So sad. So, so sad. 1:35. This is one of the few articles in this, or headlines in this book, that actually showed pictures of the people in the building. This is from Mexico City, Mexico, El Universal. And at the top, they're like waving. Man, oh, they're dead. Man, they are dead. They're gone. They're just gone. So sad. They're just waving like nobody can save them. The last picture of all of them. 146. Which is the last picture, and it's from Sweden. Stockholm, Sweden. Expressen. And this is just the end. I think this was a good picture to end with for this book. There's really no happy way of ending this book, honestly. It's just, boom, what it is. Acknowledgement. Front pages are the end product of hundreds of reporters, artists, photographers, editors, and even a few bosses working for the most part in concert, despite chaotic conditions. Such pages are designed every day by journalists who exercise, under intense deadline pressure, a mix of news, judgment, and artistry. Some of the pages printed here are extras, that rare form of newspapering that rushes news to the street without regard for business as usual. The other pages were published the day after the attacks. Within the limits of deadline and form, front pages take a wide range of expression. Some are stark and declarative, their black backgrounds creating what Monica Moses of Pointer calls funereal posters. We received no front pages from some parts of the world, including the Middle East and much of Asia. I mean, like, they probably are like, I'm not sending you nothing. Like, I think people would have been angry if it had come from the Middle East, honestly. Maybe that's why they didn't send it. It was just too soon. The book is itself a result of the collaborative deadline skills at the Poynter Institute, especially staff of Poynter Online. So yeah, that is the end of this book. On the back is a picture of the Twin Towers still standing in their full glory. I think this is a very good book to add to your collection if you are a person that collects books on 9/11. I also think it's good if you are a person going into journalism, just to see the different ways people will tell a story and lay out a story, what methods you could use, because some people focused on people, some people focus on the horror, some people focus on the aftermath and different things. So it was really interesting to see all of these images. I learned a lot about media and the links that you could go just by these collection of images. So, oh, did I point out my own hometown, St. Louis, Missouri? I can't do that without leaving. So this is from my city, St. Louis, Missouri. None of us will ever forget this day. And down below, some comments. There's, how could this happen? What happened here? So what happened here in St. Louis? It says, at Lambert, which is our airport, marooned and diverted passengers sought information. At churches, mosques, and temples, worshippers sought solace. At area schools, teachers and students sought ways to understand the magnitude and meaning of the events. At work and home, St. Louisans sought out each other, recounting and knowing they'd remember where they were when they heard the horrible news. What's next? President George W. Bush and other officials vow not to let terrorism undermine American life, but Tuesday's attacks will surely alter it. Expect airport waits to be longer and stock prices to fluctuate. Gasoline prices may rise. Other changes may be less concrete, more fundamental as Americans come to grips with a new sense of vulnerability. The open society is going to be less open, historian David McCullough predicted. Now that is the truth. Coverage of Tuesday's terrorist attacks in the United States has resulted in changes in where some things appear in today's paper. The first two sections are devoted to stories of terrorism and its impact on our lives, including its business implications. The third section contains sports, other national world news, local news, obituaries, and the weather report. Well, business as usual. It's just amazing how sometimes it could be decades passing and things will still feel as fresh as it was when it happened. Like sometimes I'll think back to when I was a little girl and I was just so scared and I had no understanding of the world and I didn't know what to make of it. I didn't know how to process anything. But now that I'm grown and things happen, I can better process things. I can see the grand scale. I'm not as reactionary as I was. I'm better at questioning things. I'm better at really looking at the information that is given to me and trying to do as much research as I can. When I was a child, in the environment I was in, I was very gullible. I believed anything. I believed the media, and it shows you how powerful the media is. It can sway the collective consciousness and collective mentality and create an entirely new society just based off of altering your thoughts and your thought processes. Media is a very powerful tool, and that is not something I knew as a child. But now as an adult, I'm glad I know these things, and I'm glad that I've begun developing the wisdom and discernment when something happens in my life or our collective lives and how to react when it happens. So yes, rest in peace to all of the victims of September 11th, the ones that were in the Twin Towers, the ones on the planes, the ones at the Pentagon, those that went off to war, people that were affected all over the world, people that were suffering from just the chemical effects of, the attacks. I remember them all today, and may they all rest in peace. May there be peace on earth and have a society that is pro-humanity, pro-brotherhood, sisterhood for us all around the world and in this galaxy. So, happy reading, everyone, and never forget,